There are moments in a nation's story when the trembling underfoot does not begin with an earthquake, nor is it caused by an army's advance or a court's verdict. It begins in silence, in the still spaces between breaths, in the subtle shift of a people's spirit. The storm does not first rise in the sky, it rises in the hearts of those who have forgotten their center. And now, what we witness on the horizon, the rising storm surrounding Trump, is not a sudden storm. It's the rising in the hearts of the central nation. It is the rising of the hearts of the central nation. It is the rising of the hearts of the central nation. It is the rising of the hearts of the central nation. It is the rising of the hearts of the central nation. It is the rising of the heart of the central nation. It is the echo of an internal fracture. It is the outer manifestation of something that has long been neglected within. A nation does not fall in a single day. A man does not rise or collapse by mere accident. These things are born from something deeper, slower and far more dangerous. The erosion of inner awareness, the loss of clarity, the abandonment of discipline, the slow replacement of truth with emotion, of vision with reaction. Many look to the headlines to see what is about to happen. They watch the courtrooms, the protests, the campaigns, the accusations. They see danger, yes. They sense conflict. They feel the weight of history pressing in, but they miss the root. For the true danger is not found in the event. It is found in the disconnection that made the event possible. When the heart of a people becomes distracted, pulled in 1,000 directions, drawn to spectacle instead of truth, then the storm is already here, long before the thunder sounds. And in such times, the fall of a leader is not the true crisis. The crisis is the state of the people who followed blindly, who cheered without reflection, who hated without restraint. It is not the man alone. It is the mirror. This moment in America's journey is not just about Trump. It is about what he represents, what he has drawn out of the collective, what he has revealed. His rise, his dominance, his controversies, they did not come from a void. They were born of a longing, a deep unrest, a hunger in the national soul. People desired something, strength, perhaps, or identity, or defiance, or revenge. And when that hunger goes unnamed, unexamined, it can manifest through anything, through anyone. The danger begins not when that person takes power, but when the people no longer ask why they gave it. What is about to happen may be deadly, but not because of legal outcomes or political consequences. It is deadly because it tempts the soul to react without wisdom, to either celebrate the downfall with glee or to resist it with blind rage. Both responses are shallow. Both feed the same. The fire of ego, of vengeance, of division. And this fire does not heal, it consumes. The greater threat is not the fall of Trump. The greater threat is that the people no longer pause to see what is truly unfolding within themselves. They no longer stop to ask, why are we here? What have we become? And what are we choosing right now, in this moment? True storms, the kind that reshape landscapes, do not just destroy, they reveal. They strip away what is weak, what is built on false foundations, and they show what still stands, what has depth, what was built with care. America now faces such a storm, and the only way through is inward. The only way forward is through self-examination, discipline, stillness. To watch, not with outrage, but with awareness. To see the fall of one man as a lesson, not a weapon. To ask not what he did or what will happen to him, but what this moment requires of each person watching. When the heart is clear, the path is simple. But clarity is not passive. It must be trained. Just as a warrior trains his body to endure, so must the nation train its spirit to remain unmoved. In times of trial, when emotions rise and loyalties are tested, the undisciplined mind will be swept away. It will lash out. It will defend blindly. It will cling to sides. But the trained mind will remain centered. They will see that this moment, as deadly as it may appear, is not an end, it is a test of what has been built in silence when no one was watching. Those who chase storms are often consumed by them, but those who prepare in the quiet, who train their thoughts, who align their values, who act not from impulse but from clarity, those are the ones who endure. What is coming may be dark, it may shake institutions, relationships, even entire belief systems. But the darkness is not the enemy. The enemy is the unexamined mind that fears the darkness. For in truth, what is revealed in these moments is the strength or weakness of the foundations beneath our feet. What is happening to Trump then is both personal and collective. It is a spotlight on the structure of power, yes, but more importantly, it is a mirror. Those who praised, those who cursed, those who remained silent, all are now shown what was built. And each must now choose whether to double down on the illusions or to rise beyond them. To pray for America in such a time is not just to speak words. It is to embody the discipline the nation has forgotten. It is to live as if truth still matters, as if wisdom still holds power, as if restraint is not weakness, but strength. The storm outside will do what it must, but the greater question is whether the storm inside has been faced, whether the roots are deep enough to hold, whether the foundation will crack, or whether it will become the ground from which a new strength rises. So let the noise come, let the headlines scream, let the judgments fly. But let your mind remain still, let your heart remain clear, and remember, the real storm begins not in the courtroom, not on the streets, not in the votes cast or verdicts given. The real storm begins and ends within. Within. Every leader who rises is not born from themselves alone. No figure of prominence, no president, no ruler stands apart from the collective force that lifted them. Leadership is not an isolated phenomenon. It is a mirror, a manifestation, a consequence. It is not the wind itself, but the flag moved by the wind. To understand what is about to happen to Trump, one must first understand what America has become. For he is not separate from the people, he is their expression. He did not appear by accident, he was summoned. By desire, by discontent, by a collective spiritual hunger that had gone too long unfed. It is easy to watch a man face trials and say, he deserves it, or he is being persecuted. But both of these thoughts miss the deeper question. What does his story reveal about the inner landscape of the nation? A nation gets the leader it reflects, not the one it wants, but the one it embodies. If the people are divided, reactive, hungry for spectacle, and desperate for identity, then they will raise up someone who channels that very energy. And if they do not see it, they will suffer the consequences. Not because they were victims of deception, but because they failed to look within. And the truth is, Trump did not force himself upon the people. He was chosen, he was elevated. And this was not just political, it was spiritual. In him, people saw something they longed for. perhaps confidence, perhaps rebellion, perhaps strength. But none of these are pure qualities. When drawn from an undisciplined heart, even strength becomes destruction. If Trump now faces a fall, it is not solely his burden. It belongs to all who created the environment for it to happen. And if America suffers, it is not because of one man, but because the people did not take responsibility for what they were creating. You cannot eat poison and blame the cook. You cannot stoke fire and then wonder why you are burned. Every leader is a result, a visible tip of a vast, invisible iceberg of shared emotions, collective fears, and unspoken values. And when that leader collapses, it is not simply the end of their journey, it is a reflection of what lies beneath. To observe what is about to happen is to confront a nation's shadow. Many will either blindly defend him or viciously attack him, but both responses are superficial. What is required now is the courage to say, this is not about him. This is about us. About what we allowed, what we ignored, what we celebrated, what we feared. And if we fail to do this, we will simply repeat the same cycle again. One leader will fall, another will rise, and the people will once again be caught in the illusion that salvation or destruction comes from outside. But it never has. It always comes from within. True leadership in its highest form does not feed division. It does not weaponize truth. It does not bend to popularity. It is steady, clear, anchored. Such leadership can only be supported by a people who are also steady, clear. And without that foundation, even the wisest leader would be dragged down into the chaos. And with that foundation, even an imperfect leader could be lifted toward balance. So the real question is not what will happen to Trump. The real question is what is happening within the spirit of the people. That is the deeper battlefield. If there is now danger, if what awaits is deadly, it is not because of a courtroom verdict or political vendetta. It is because the foundation of the collective soul is unstable. Because people have become consumed by personality instead of principle. Because the people have chosen conflict over contemplation. They have chosen drama over discipline. They have forgotten that real change begins in the unseen places. In thoughts, in choices, in values upheld when no one is watching. Look deeply. What did Trump reflect? He reflected fear and defiance. He reflected a hunger for identity and the rejection of traditional norms. He reflected the tension between freedom and control, between pride and humility. He was loud because the people had become addicted to noise. He was confrontational because the people had forgotten how to listen. He was defiant because the people had lost trust. So what rises in a leader rises first in the hearts of the people. And if that leader now suffers, then the people must look inward, not outward. A man may wear the crown, but the people built the throne. And if the throne was built in haste, in anger or in fear, then no man can sit upon it without trembling. The time has come to rebuild. Not just laws and systems, but values and clarity. The real danger is not what happens to one man. It is that millions watch his rise and fall without recognizing their part in it. Without seeing that he is not separate from them. He is them. He is the unspoken desire made manifest. And unless that desire is purified, healed, disciplined, the next leader will carry the same infection. Leadership is not a savior, it is a symbol. And in a time of deep confusion, that symbol becomes a compass. But if the compass is broken, it leads not to safety but to destruction. And the compass breaks when the people no longer practice discernment, when they react instead of reflect, when they vote without vision, when they cheer without contemplation. The storm now gathering over Trump is only a symptom. The root lies deeper in the hearts of the people, in the values they hold, in the shadows they have yet to confront. So let the people no longer say, "He is to blame." Let them say, "He is our mirror," and let that mirror drive them inward. To become more honest, more still, more grounded, let this moment be a turning point, not of political victory, but of spiritual awakening. For the fall of a man may shake the ground, but the rise of awareness can rebuild it. And if that awareness spreads quietly, steadily, then the next leader will not need to carry the burden of the people's unresolved pain. He will not be asked to fight their shadows or amplify their wounds. Instead, he will reflect something higher, something stronger, something worthy. And that is the true calling of this moment. Not to judge, not to react, but to return. To return to clarity, to return to presence, to return to the truth that every leader reflects the people. And in doing so, to become the kind of people who no longer need a storm to wake them up. There are times when the fall of a single person reverberates beyond the boundaries of that individual's life. In such moments, something far greater is revealed. Not the end of a man, but the exposure of a hidden pattern, a buried truth, or an invitation to awaken. What is about to happen to Trump may seem like a personal trial, a political reckoning, or a legal outcome, but beyond all appearances, it is a signal that the structure on which many have relied is shaking. The fall of a man can become the spark that forces the collective to open its eyes. And if the eyes do not open now, the consequences will only grow more intense, more divisive, more destructive. A leader does not walk alone. His words, his choices, and his rise to prominence are woven into the desires, fears, and unresolved conflicts of the people he represents. When that leader begins to fall, the temptation is to watch the drama unfold and detach from responsibility. But that detachment is the very reason the fall becomes so devastating. If the people do not recognize that the leader's downfall is not isolated, but intertwined with their own state of being, they will miss the wisdom offered by the collapse. The fall is not a punishment. It is a call. A call to awaken from illusion. A call to see that the tower was leaning long before it broke. A call to ask, what in us created this? What in us must now change? The true power of a fall lies in the possibility of transformation. When the structure is cracked, the foundation is laid bare. When the image is shattered, the reality is finally visible. If what is about to happen is deadly, then let it be deadly to illusion. Let it be the death of false security, of blind loyalty, of idolized power. Let the fall of a man awaken the people to what they have become. For only in awakening can the cycle be broken, and only through breaking can something new emerge. Most people sleep through their lives. They follow others, repeat old habits, and protect their comfort zones. It often takes a shock, a crisis, a sudden collapse to force the eyes open. It always does. The question is, when it comes, will we finally choose to see? The fall of a leader like Trump, surrounded by noise and emotion, can be either a distraction or a revelation. If the mind is undisciplined, it will be distracted. If the mind is clear, it will find the teaching. And the teaching is this: nothing external will save you. No leader, no party, no movement can replace the inner work you refuse to do. People project their hopes onto leaders. They want strength, so they look for someone who appears strong. They want change, so they follow someone who breaks the rules. But if they do not understand the difference between real strength and uncontrolled force, they will end up betrayed, not by the leader, but by their own misunderstanding. The fall of such a leader is not a tragedy. The tragedy is that the people still look outside for salvation. They have not yet turned inward. And so history repeats itself. New names, same patterns. This moment must be different. The shaking must awaken. The collapse must clarify. If Trump falls, let it not be the end of a chapter, but the beginning of new understanding. Let it not be the fall of a man alone, but the fall of collective blindness. And let the awakening be not in anger, nor in blame, but in honest reflection. What was followed, what was ignored, what was trusted and why, what was feared and how was that fear manipulated. Only when these questions are faced in stillness can the lessons be received. When one man falls, many rise. But they do not rise automatically. They rise only if they choose to stand, not on reaction, but on truth. Not on identity politics or partisan loyalty, but on the deeper values that transcend all temporary movements. Courage, wisdom, stillness, compassion. These are not found in headlines. They are cultivated in the heart. And the fall of a prominent figure is often the moment that finally drives people back to those inner places. Because the outer world has proven once again to be unstable. You cannot stop the fall, but you can decide what you will do when it comes. Will you join the chaos? Will you gloat? Or will you enjoy the chaos? Will you gloat? Will you attack? Or will you step back and ask, what is life teaching us now? What am I being shown? What does this moment ask of me? Because the answers to these questions shape what comes next. The fall is not the end. It is a doorway. But only those who walk through it with awareness will enter into something higher. Every society builds myths. Myths of strength, of justice, of national destiny. These myths are carried by individuals, and when those individuals fall, the myth is threatened. But this is not a loss, it is an opportunity. The opportunity to see that truth needs no myth to support it. That values are not diminished by the fall of one who claimed to embody them. That the strength of a nation lies not in the invincibility of its leaders, but in the clarity and responsibility of its people. Let what is happening to Trump be a revelation, not of guilt or innocence in a court of law, but of the deeper spiritual law that governs all things. That pride comes before the fall. That illusion cannot stand forever. That truth, no matter how buried, will always surface in time. And that when the surface breaks, it is up to each person to decide whether to sink with the wreckage or rise with the lesson. This is the time to rise. To rise not in rebellion, but in awareness. Not in reaction, but in clarity. The eyes must open now. The moment is urgent. The consequences are real. But within those consequences lies the seed of a new way, the seed of a deeper strength, the seed of a more honest people who no longer look to one man to define them, but who find their definition in the quiet integrity of how they live, how they treat others, and how they face truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. So let the fall happen. Let the storm come. But do not let it come in vain. Let it awaken. Let it clarify. Let it purify. For this is the mercy hidden within collapse, the chance to begin again. Let the people define the collapse. For this is the mercy hidden within collapse. The chance to begin. The fall of one man can ignite the awakening of many, if the eyes are open. And when the eyes open, the heart can finally lead. And when the heart leads, the future will not be built on fear, but on something far stronger. In moments of deep national tension, when voices rise like thunder and opinions clash like swords, it becomes harder and harder to hear what is real. Not because truth has vanished, but because it has been buried beneath the weight of noise. When silence is no longer respected, when wisdom is drowned out by the loudest voice in the room, the consequence is not just confusion, it is chaos. And the chaos that surrounds what is about to happen to Trump is not a spontaneous eruption. It is the natural result of years of spiritual neglect, of abandoning the discipline of listening, and of replacing contemplation with clamor. In such an environment, silence becomes a threat. Stillness is mocked, and the few who try to speak from depth are often unheard, not because their words lack value, but because the ears of the people are already full. Silence is not emptiness, it is the place where clarity begins. And the only place to really hear anything is where clarity is. It is where thought finds order, where emotion is tempered, where reaction is softened into reflection. But when a society abandons silence, when it fills every moment with argument, every space with noise, every mind with distraction, it loses its access to truth. Not because truth has changed, but because the people no longer have the discipline to reach it. The situation surrounding Trump is not just political. It is the manifestation of a deeper disorder, the inability to be still, the inability to wait before judging, the inability to see the whole picture because one is too eager to defend a part of it. When wisdom speaks, it does not shout, it does not compete, it does not demand attention. It waits. It waits in silence, ready to be discovered by the one willing to slow down. But in a culture that prizes immediacy and rewards outrage, that silence is quickly ignored. And so chaos rises, leaders fall, institutions fracture, and all the while the real warning goes unnoticed. The warning that the problem was never just about one man. It was about what the people had chosen to become. In forgetting how to listen, they had forgotten how to lead themselves. Look now at what surrounds the moment. Words flying like weapons, accusations on every side, loyalties tested, tempers flared. And in all of this, who pauses? Who breathes? Who steps back and asks, what is the higher truth beneath this noise? That is the rare voice. And yet, it is the only voice that can guide. Because wisdom does not fight to be heard, it simply remains, waiting for the disciplined soul to return to it. What is about to happen to Trump and the nation watching him is more than a legal matter. It is a spiritual test. Will the people continue to follow the noise, or will they remember the power of silence? This silence is not weakness. It is strength under control. It is the space where perspective is born. When people cannot sit in silence, they become controlled by the next loud thing. And the next loud thing always seeks control. It does not lead. It does not heal. It dominates. And in this domination, people lose their connection to truth. They begin to mistake volume for value, emotion for insight, fury for justice. And once this confusion sets in, chaos becomes inevitable. What is unfolding now in America is not only about Trump. It is about a people who have forgotten their center, who have abandoned the quiet places where wisdom once grew. It is about a people so divided, so constantly agitated that they cannot discern the difference between a leader and a performer, between truth and convenience, between loyalty and blindness. In such a climate, even if truth were to speak clearly, it would not be heard, because the ears are already tuned to noise. The hearts are already hardened by repetition. The minds are already trained for battle, not for balance. So, what is the remedy? It is not to silence others, it is to reclaim silence within, to create space again for wisdom to rise, for contemplation to return, to stop feeding the chaos with reaction and begin nurturing the soil where truth can take root. This is not easy. In fact, it is the hardest path, because silence requires strength. It requires the courage to wait. To hear an accusation and not immediately choose a side. To look at the fall of a leader and ask not just what does this mean for him, but what does this reveal about us? When wisdom is ignored long enough, the consequences become painful. Not because wisdom has failed, but because the people refused to listen until the pain became too loud to bear. Trump's journey is now entangled with this lesson. His rise came through noise, his dominance was amplified by it. And now his fall, if it comes, will echo through the same corridors of sound. But if there is anything to be learned from this moment, it is not found in the volume, it is found in the absence of it. In the spaces where reflection waits, in the pauses between headlines, in the questions that emerge only when the shouting stops. It is there that transformation can begin. It is there that the nation can begin to heal, not through argument, but through awareness, not through punishment, but through understanding. Because the real danger is not what happens to one man, it is what the people do with what happens. Will they deepen their division, or will they deepen their insight? Will they raise their voices, or will they raise their standards? Will they continue to chase the next outrage, or will they return to the discipline of stillness? The power of silence is that it does not need to prove itself. It waits. It outlasts noise. It outlasts chaos. It becomes the ground upon which something real can finally be built. but the people must return to it willingly. They must be willing to lay down their weapons of word and posture and remember that truth is not always found in what is said, but often in what is not. The discipline to remain silent when others rush to speak is not weakness, it is mastery. And a nation without mastery over itself cannot survive the storms of leadership, corruption, or collapse. What is about to happen is deadly, not because it ends a career, but because it threatens to harden a nation's heart even further. But that threat can become a turning point if it is met with silence, with reflection, with the courage to no longer follow the crowd, but to sit in stillness and ask, what is real, what is necessary, what is true, and in that asking, something begins to shift. The chaos loses its grip, the noise loses its appeal, and wisdom, long forgotten, begins to rise again. Let it rise, let it speak, not through shouting, but through presence, not through declarations, but through decisions. Let it guide, not by force, but by example. And in that silent example, the future may yet be rewritten. A future where the fall of one does not trigger the fall of all, but instead awakens the many. Because when silence is chosen over reaction and wisdom is chosen over noise, chaos no longer has power. And the people become, once again, their own leaders.